Hello there everyone, today's video is all about entrepreneurs relief being denied. So entrepreneurs relief, that favourable rate of capital gains tax for shares and business assets that you sell, and you only pay capital gains tax at 10%, not the default 20%. Now, in this case, entrepreneurs relief was denied. So, BADR, to give it its correct title, business asset disposal relief. Lovingly referred to as entrepreneurs relief. So in this case, let's take a look at what happened. You had a trading company, and several people were shareholders of this trading company, including one guy who had 4.99997% of the shares. Now, the way it was done, the way it was kind of worked out when he'd acquired these shares over the years, to all intents and purposes, he'd been treated as if he'd had 5% of the shares. And indeed, when this company sold out to a third party, and the third party acquired the shareholdings of all the shareholders, he got exactly 5% of the total proceeds. So I think it was something around about £20 million in total. So he got his hands on £1 million, exactly 5% of the proceeds. So put it on his tax return, said, yeah, I've got 5% shareholding, and I've owned the shares for a certain period, which qualifies, ticks the box, and I'm an employee, I'm a director, ticks the box, and I've got my 5%. So I'm going to pay capital gains tax of just 10% on my £1 million gain. HMRC opened up an inquiry into this, and they analysed it all out, and they said, oh, hang on a minute, you don't meet the requirements for entrepreneurs relief. Yes, you've had the shares for the requisite length of time. Yes, you are an employee of the company, but your shareholding falls short. You've got 4.9997% of the shares, not 5%. Seriously. And the thing went to the courts. And it went to the courts, and HMRC said, look, it's there in black and white. The number of shares that you have divided by the total share capital is just ever so fractionally under 5%. But that's the law. You only get your entrepreneurs relief if you hit 5% or more, not just under 5%. And he had literally one more share out of thousands of shares would have tripped him over the 5%, but he didn't. He didn't have that. So they said no entrepreneurs relief, and he lost. He lost in the appeal here. He lost in the courts. The courts agreed with HMRC. Now, what interesting argument that he put forward, and he said, look, really, these other guys owned the 0.0001% of the remainder for me beneficially. I was the beneficial owner, but they held it on trust for me as a bare trustee, which is an interesting argument because in the tax world, tax follows beneficial ownership, not legal ownership. So he was saying, look, legally I'm down as owning 4.999, but beneficially, which counts for tax, the remaining 0.00 is held by these two on behalf for my benefit. And when the courts examined this, they said, no, it's not. No, it's not. These guys had there was never any agreement that these guys held more as a beneficial than they legally had owning for themselves. They didn't have anything else that they had on behalf of this other guy. So it was a cute argument to put forward, bearing in mind that, like I said, often that is an argument that's put forward in other areas to say, look, don't just look at the legalities, look at the beneficial ownership, because tax follows beneficial, not legal. But in this case, listen, it didn't work. These other guys they weren't holding anything as bare trustees for the beneficial ownership of this other guy. So that argument failed. And it was an interesting one. But the point is, the takeaway from this video is, for goodness sakes, check your shares, particularly before you're about to sell. And even another one, he said, look, it shows you I got 5% of the total, exactly 5%, not 4.99, and that didn't wash either. So again, it all just came back to what does he actually have? And it was quite simple, argument really for the tribunal and for HMRC. They said, look, you've got X number of shares divided by Y number of total shares, and you've got 4.9997%, not 5. So I would encourage you to have a look at your shareholdings, particularly if you are in a trading business with shares, more than one shareholder, and you're a minority shareholder, and you thought you were okay on the exceeding 5%, particularly if there's been rounds of buyouts over the years. So you might have been subject to takeovers or reverse takeovers or acquisitions or share buybacks or goodness knows what. Since the point at which you owned the very first shares, your shareholder might have been diluted, but crucially diluted below that 5% when you think that it hasn't. And you can get really specific because there are different classes of shares: voting shares, non-voting shares, A shares, B shares. So for goodness sake, have a look at what you have. Have a look at your articles of association, the company governance, the makeup of the framework of the company. Look at the shareholdings, and don't end up in a situation like this guy. I mean, it's you got to feel for this guy. The fact that he's so close to getting his entrepreneurs leave. So let's work this out. So he got £1 million. So if he'd have got his ER, he'd have paid 10%. So he'd have paid 100 grand. So instead he paid 200 grand. So for the sake of one extra share out of thousands, it's cost him 100 grand of tax. So just a cautionary tale there. An overview on entrepreneurs leave, getting it right, making sure you know exactly what shareholdings you have and what will and what won't qualify for entrepreneurs relief. So if you like this video, please do subscribe, and as always, I will see you soon.